Thank you so much for being here, Secretary Clinton. I'm so happy that you are able to join us because we have a lot to discuss.
Yes, we do, Errin. I've been looking forward to this.
Same. All right, so let's get started. Now, you're in Little Rock this week. You're hosting a summit about the power of women's voices. And so I want to start by asking just how you're thinking about that power, especially in terms of the results of last month's midterm elections, when we really saw women using their voices at the ballot box, particularly around issues of rights.
Well, Errin, you're singing my tune here because I'm at the Clinton Presidential Center in Little Rock, and we have an exhibit that started as a commemoration of the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, right? Up your alley in terms of what the 19th stands for. And it was postponed for 2 years because of COVID, but it's been up since September. And I urge everybody to come through Little Rock to see it because it's about women's vote, women's voice, and women's rights. And that really sums it up for me. And it's a history of the suffragist movement. It's a history of, women, white and black, Latino, Native American working together. It's got an international focus about what's been really driving women from Malala to Ellen Johnson Sirleaf to get into politics, to speak out, to make a difference. And it is important, especially now that we have seen both the power of women's votes at the midterm election. Let's keep that going. And the efforts to push back our rights with the Dobbs decision, undermining a woman's right to make the most personal healthcare decisions, including abortion. So it could not come at a more opportune time to try to get as many people as possible into this conversation, because it's part of what I believe is at stake in saving our democracy, in making it clear that we're not going back. I don't care how powerful the interests are on the side that wants us to. We're going to do things like we did in the Congress this week, to make a federal law to protect gay marriage and interracial marriage. We're going to keep fighting back, but we can't fight back unless women's voices and votes are at the forefront of these efforts.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point that you're making, and really to talk about that representation. I mean, women didn't necessarily make record gains this cycle, but their numbers in Congress do remain at the highest that we've seen in our country's history. And you did have women winning kind of some key victories in state offices too, for Attorney General, for Secretary of State, for Governor. You kind of alluded to this, but I'm wondering if you can just talk about where we are in terms of women's representation in elected office and what the stakes are for why that really matters now, particularly in terms of how that is translating into policy or how that can translate into policy.
Well, it could not be more important for more women to decide to run and wage campaigns at all levels of our government, from the very local school boards, city council, county commissions, state legislatures, all the way up to, the Congress and yes, the White House. Because if we don't have representation and we don't have women's voices helping to shape the debate, then we leave a vacuum. And, as you were pointing out, we elected and re-elected women governors. We now have 8 Democratic women governors, 4 Republican women governors, some of whom I don't agree with on most issues. So it's important not just for women to run, but for women who do run to be committed to the women's rights agenda, to the democracy agenda, to be on the side of making it easier to vote, not harder to vote, to ensuring that the votes are counted correctly, not manipulated for a preconceived outcome. So women's voices have to be at the forefront of this debate. And we're seeing that around the world too, Errin, because I do believe there is a struggle between democracy and autocracy. We see what's happening in Afghanistan, in Iran, where young women are leading a revolution to try to throw off the yoke of oppression. We see women literally on the front lines in Ukraine trying to defend their freedom and democracy. So this is a time, if you've ever thought about your own place in society, the rights that you have, the rights that our foremothers fought for over so many years, for you to at least vote, but maybe even think about running for something.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you're bringing that up. And you mentioned Iran. I mean, you recently said that the fight of Iranian women is our fight. I wonder what you think the United States or other democratic countries should do in response to these protests or the government's crackdowns, or really how you're kind of seeing this moment in the fight for women's rights. I mean, obviously, I remember your famous line about women's rights being human rights.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I am supporting a number of groups that are agitating for greater attention and action when it comes to holding the Iranian government accountable and supporting the brave women, girls, boys, and men who are still, after more than 100 days, in the streets of Iran demanding their rights. So I joined with a group of women leaders from around the world on a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the UN to kick Iran off the UN Commission on the Status of Women. They should never have been put on there in the first place, but they should certainly be kicked off. I supported the efforts to launch an investigation into what's going on in Iran at the UN Human Rights Council. I was just recently at an event in New York with a lot of Iranian American women, including a lot of artists who were begging the world, keep your eyes on Iran, because by keeping the attention on Iran, it gives heart to those who are protesting on the inside. And it also sends a message to the Iranian government, both the government and the Ayatollahs, that you're being watched. You know, you can't shut out the world. Social media prevents you from being able to do that like you maybe could in the past. And we're going to do everything we can in whatever way it's possible to keep raising your oppression, your terrible tactics of imprisonment and death that you're imposing on protesters, because this is part of our struggle. You know, I really truly believe that when women are denied their basic rights anywhere, it gives heart to those who want to take away rights somewhere else. And therefore, it is our fight, just like it's our fight to keep standing up on behalf of the rights of Afghan women. It's our fight to speak out against the barbaric use of rape as a tactic of war in Ukraine. It's our fight to be on the front lines wherever women's rights are under attack, including in our own country. Because, Errin, the forces against women's rights are still everywhere around us. You know, we think we make progress, and this exhibit, I hope you can come. I hope the people from the 19th will come to Little Rock before the exhibit's taken down late in the spring. We have artifacts and important documents. We have quilts, some of the most beautiful quilts I've ever seen, you know, celebrating Shirley Chisholm or Fannie Lou Hamer, looking at other women from history who have sacrificed so much for us, that I just want this story to be told over and over again. It's easy to take your rights for granted. I think that's why so many people were surprised when the Supreme Court did what I warned they would do when I was running for president, which was if they got enough votes on the Supreme Court, they would reverse Roe v. Wade. People were surprised because you think, who goes back on rights? I mean, that makes no sense. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And now we're living it. And left to their own devices, they're going to try to undermine voting rights and keep on, you know, trying to prevent women from getting the health care that we deserve to have, and so much else. So it's really important to keep the focus on this.
Yeah, and really what you're saying about a shared fate that I think maybe more Americans are realizing, not just women, but people in our country are realizing with folks around the world as women's rights and human rights are under threat across the globe. I mean, yeah, what does it mean for bringing it back to this country? Just to be in this moment where you do have women serving in elected office in these record numbers, but who are also feeling, again, to your point, this erosion of power, this erosion of agency, of autonomy, of safety and freedom.
Well, it's a reminder that no political victory or defeat is permanent, because the forces of reaction, the forces of the status quo, the forces that want to rewrite or eliminate history are always with us. And when we make progress, we have to keep looking around and be very vigilant, because there's somebody waiting to undo it if they get a chance. And I've learned that over a long, long life in and around politics and advocacy and direct action, because I used to think, well, who could be against these things? I mean, who could be against giving everybody the right to vote? And we know there are a lot of people, because they want to control other people. They want power, and they therefore want to eliminate people who won't vote for their view of society and where they want to take us. So it's important not to get discouraged by that, but to be rejuvenated by it. Look at what's happened since the reversal of Roe v. Wade. We've had votes in a number of states about abortion. And people who believe in privacy, who believe in women's bodily autonomy, who believe in the right to health care, have won every single one of them, starting in Kansas, in Michigan, in Kentucky, in Montana, in California. So in your state, anybody who's watching this, look to see if it's a state that's tried to impose draconian restrictions that literally put your life at risk if you miscarry or you have some other health problem that requires health care that would be considered an abortion to save your life. Get with other like-minded women and men. Put something on the ballot in your state. Stand up to the forces of reaction. Don't give in to them. Don't get discouraged. Don't give up, because we will win this. We are on the right side of these issues. And the other side wins when enough people who believe as we do either walk away or get tired and give up. And we can't let that happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the state level, and we at the 19th literally have a map updated in real time about, you know, what the situation, what the stakes are on the ground for folks as these trigger laws and legal challenges continue to kind of roll out in the wake of the Dobbs decision. But just staying on the topic of abortion for a minute, I mean, you are in Arkansas and you're having this Women's Voices event there. What does it mean to you to have this event in this state where performing abortions is a felony and there are currently no exceptions for rape or incest?
It's exactly where we need to have this discussion. This is the place where we have to keep talking about these issues despite the prevailing political winds. Because if we walk away from more than half our states and we say, you know, it's too hard, or, you know, they've already made up their minds, we are giving up on the opportunity of reform and change. And I think back about all of the women who are the heroes for me in American history who said, you know what, we could get women out of slavery. We'll go rescue them, or we could get women to vote, or, you know, we're not going to accept that women can't run for office. I mean, all the things that have motivated and inspired me. I love Arkansas, and I got married here. My daughter was born here. I'm proud of the Clinton Presidential Center and Library. And I have a lot of friends here who agree with me about what we should be trying to do. We may not have the political power right now to make those changes, but you've got to keep working for change. You can't walk away because it's hard. It's supposed to be hard, or we wouldn't have these debates about what we're trying to achieve. And so I couldn't imagine a better place to do this. And I'm going to keep coming back to Arkansas, just like I will go to other places to talk about these issues, as well as, you know, New York and California and other, you know, states that are more in line with what I think should be happening. So it's important that this kind of conversation, and the summit is amazing. We have the most extraordinary women literally coming from all over the world. to be part of the discussion about women's health, about women's economic opportunity, about voting rights, about what the future holds for women as we look down the road. So it's a place where I feel very comfortable having this conversation, and I hope more people will keep talking in other places across our country.
Yeah, I want to come back to a question about representation, just because I know we're coming into the home stretch for Speaker Nancy Pelosi, whose historic tenure, as you know, is about to come to an end. I just wonder what your thoughts are on her legacy and why her leadership mattered, and if you think she's going to continue to be an influence on our politics, even as she gives up the gavel.
She is one of the most consequential people in American history. Certainly that includes being an incredibly historic political force as a woman. And what she has accomplished as Speaker of the House, both under President Obama and under President Biden, and being the minority leader under Trump, is just extraordinary. She has a real sense of conviction, commitment to getting things done, but she's also a realist and practical. She's a good vote counter. She's not going to force her Democratic members to walk a plank if she doesn't think that she can actually rescue them from falling into the water. She is truly a force in American history, and I'm so proud of her tenure as Speaker. I'm also proud of the new leadership that will be stepping in. I know all three of them. Obviously, Hakeem and Catherine and Pete are very accomplished in their own rights. They'll be a tremendous team. And that's a sign, I think, Errin, of a very successful leader. Someone who, when he or she leaves, has a good team in place to keep momentum going. So she is leaving office as Speaker with certainly big shoes to fill, but with a very strong group of leaders to come after her. And I think she has said she will stay in the Congress. I don't know for how long, but if I were Hakeem Jeffries, I'd want her to be around, because learning the ropes of trying to manage the House and manage the relationship with the Senate and with the White House, and try to win back the seats that will give us back the majority. You want all hands on deck, and Nancy will be a great advisor, as much as Hakeem wants to ask for advice, and I bet he will, because he's really smart. I'm really excited about him being in the new leader of the Democrats, and I hope I'll get to see him become the Speaker after the 2024 election.
Yeah. Well, he certainly is historic first. I want to ask you about another historic first, and that is Vice President Kamala Harris, because I'm wondering how you would assess her performance so far, and really what you think about her leadership as being assessed by others, particularly in terms of race and gender.
Look, it's always hard to be the first, and I know that. I've got the scars to prove it. Kamala is a friend of mine. I have been, in close touch with her over her time as vice president. I am very proud of her. She's worked extremely hard to do what a vice president has to do, which is to support the president's agenda. I think if you go back and look at press coverage of vice presidents, literally probably going back to the very beginning, I don't think the press coverage is all that different. People say, oh, what's the vice president doing? And why doesn't the vice president is in partnership with the president. The vice president, I know that from being around Washington for a long time, is doing what the president expects and needs the vice president to do. And I think that she's stepped into that role very effectively. And I give her high marks for trying to, figure it out, because she knew it was going to be a big hot spotlight, being literally the first woman vice president, the first woman of color, the first daughter of immigrants. I mean, the firsts are pretty impressive. And I think she's handled herself with real grace and done what she could to make sure that the president's agenda, which I think has been quite successful, and she should therefore get credit for what Joe Biden has been able to accomplish, was going to have her mark on it.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, to that point, President Biden says he's planning to run for re-election in 2024, says that she's going to be his running mate in that instance. But he's also said that he's weighing his options, which has Democrats exploring their options for a nominee. And so, I mean, this is a conversation that regularly dismisses Vice President Harris as the logical alternative in 2024. I mean, I wonder if that says anything to you about gender politics and just where we are in this conversation about electability.
Look, I do think that President Biden's going to run again. And I think all of this, back and forth conversation will be irrelevant because he's going to run again. He's going to have Kamala as his running mate again. Now, if something totally unforeseen were to happen, God forbid, and, the president either decided not to or couldn't run, Kamala's going to have to fight for it, Errin. I mean, vice presidents have had to fight to be nominated historically in a lot of different settings. And so I think she's more than up to that task. And I don't think it's going to happen. I think she'll be on the ticket because she'll be running with President Biden. But if she's not, she's got to get out there, and whoever's going to be in the Democratic primary, make her case. Just like, Mike Pence is apparently going to run as a former vice president this time around in 2024. Politics is a contact sport. Nobody has any right or entitlement to anything. And so she's well positioned. She, I think, would start off certainly ahead. But, as I know better than most, campaigns are funny, funny things. And so we'll see, how well she can run based on her record and the accomplishments that she helped President Biden achieve.
Yeah, you certainly do know something about that. Well, I mean, listen, I have to ask you too, because Donald Trump has now announced that he is running for president for the third time.
Yeah.
This is not 2016. Obviously, we know who Donald Trump is now. The country has had a chance to get to know him. And this is going to be a question of who the voters are. But I'm wondering, really, what does this mean in your mind that he's running for a third time? What does that mean for our democracy?
Look, I think he's a cancer on our democracy. And I think he has done great damage, which the Biden-Harris administration has worked really hard to reverse. But he still has a base following. And if he runs, he will probably be even more inflammatory and unfortunate in his rhetoric about all kinds of people and issues. I don't think he will get a free pass. I think others will run, as I said, for the Republican nomination. So it'll be a free-for-all. I don't have any idea what will happen on the Republican side. But he is a dangerous demagogue, and it would be to the country's advantage if he did not get out there and stir up a lot of very inflammatory rhetoric again, setting people against each other. But I have no idea what he will do.
Yeah. Well, another thing that's different from 2016, when you ran, you were the lone woman that was running for president. In 2026 women ran for president. One of them went on, obviously, to become vice president. Do you think that we're in an era now where we should expect multiple women candidates to run for president as the new normal in our politics?
I hope so. I mean, I was thrilled that we had more than one woman running in 2020, and I want to see that again, because we need to break a lot of the stereotypes and caricatures of women in politics. Men in politics come in all sizes and shapes and haircuts and everything. And so we need more women out there so that the American voting public can see that so do we. We have different approaches. There are women being elected as Republicans that I totally disagree with and really regret the positions that they're taking. But having more women in the mix does increase representation. And so, yes, I think we want more women in every election. And I was thrilled that we had, 8 Democratic women and, yes, 4 Republican women elected governors, because, an executive position is harder often to convince voters to vote for a woman. And we seem to be making progress in breaking down those stereotypes and barriers.
Yeah, getting elected statewide, and really the governorship is as a pipeline to
It is. It's a big pipeline, just as being a senator is.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely matters. Well, I have to ask, we're having this conversation around women and power in our politics. I wonder if you think that we're going to see a woman president in your lifetime.
Oh, Errin, I hope so, but I hope it's the right kind of woman. I want a woman who protects women's rights. I want a woman who protects voting rights. I want a woman who understands the stresses on, working moms today. I want a woman who is really on the side of positive change. And I think you'll see women on the Republican side running this time. And they're not women I would ever vote for, to be honest, because I'm thrilled that they would run, but I'm not going to vote for a woman who would take my rights away, or my daughter's rights away, or my granddaughter's rights away. So I think it's fair to say that I hope there will be a woman president, but I hope it's a woman who is in the line of the women like those we are highlighting at our exhibit here at the Clinton Presidential Center. The women who broke down barriers, who brought others with them, who stood up to unaccountable power, who changed our laws and our society for the better. Those are the kind of women that I hope we see coming from that tradition for whoever the first woman president might be.
Yeah, I just look all around the world at countries that have elected women leaders. I just wonder what you think it says about our country that this still has not happened yet, and what it's going to take from this electorate for that to happen.
I think there are structural and cultural reasons, as well as political, as to why other countries have gotten there first with women. And one of the big differences, I think, is the parliamentary system versus the presidential system. And by that, I mean, if you're in a parliament, as the women prime ministers of the UK have been, or the women prime ministers in Finland or Norway, or the chancellor in Germany, or the prime minister in India or Israel, it's easier to put together a coalition that is very supportive of one of your colleagues running, who you have gotten to know, someone who you feel like you are in a collegial relationship. And so I've always thought that, frankly, parliamentary systems are going to produce, as we have seen historically, are going to produce more women leaders. And it's really important to understand that structural difference. Now, there are a few presidential systems, like in Liberia with Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, or in Chile with Michelle Bachelet, where women can emerge because the parties are strong and they really support whoever their candidate would be. So I think these structural historic differences matter, but I also think in our country, parties are not involved in picking our candidates, despite what some may think. They come in once we have a candidate, because voters at the state level pick our candidates. And so every candidate starts from scratch. They start from the, starter gun, basically, and they have to raise money, and it's so much money to run for president. And they have to run the gauntlet of the press, which is really hard and can be quite brutal. So it's just a really difficult position. And so we'll get there. I just don't know when, but I'm hoping sooner instead of later. I want to be around.
So do I. So do I. Well, listen, Secretary Clinton, thank you so much for this. A lot to talk about at this moment with you, and you definitely felt like the right person to hear from on all of these issues. So thank you again for your
Thank
time,
you.
for your insights.
It's so great talking to you, Errin. And again, I extend an invitation. The 19th should come to the exhibit. We'd love to have you.
Thank you for that invitation. I think I may have to take you up on it.
Okay. Take care now. Bye.